If you've been following the work of Lester Levenson, you've probably heard the term the butt system, which points out that all you have to do is just sit on your butt and release and let everything come to you with ease. Now, to most of us, that sounds pretty far out and esoteric. But today, I'm going to share with you some real-life, practical examples of how you can accomplish more in your life while doing less. Welcome to the Power of Quiet, the simple way to self-realization. So if you want total control of your mind and more happiness and abundance in your life, then you come to the right place. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe. You're going to love what we show you because it's 100% experiential. Meaning you don't have to believe me, but try what we show you, see the results that you get. That way you take over checking and you know what works and what doesn't work. And if you're a regular here, you love the work that we do, and it makes a big difference in your life, then let us know. Hit the like button below and share your gains. And share this video with your friends and with others around you so that we can get this wonderful method out to the world and make the whole world a much better place for all of us to live in. Now, Lester Levenson, as most of you know, for those of you who are familiar with Lester, he's a great spiritual master who stumbled upon enlightenment in his own life just by following some simple logic. And what he ended up doing was coming up with a very simple method for the rest of us to follow in his footsteps and to discover what he discovered and what all these other masters, Jesus, Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, Yogananda, all these great ones that we've listened to and we've heard about, he's shown us the way, a very simple and practical way to do that too. Now, something that Lester used to always talk about is something that is a common spiritual saying is let go and let God. Because as Lester put it, can God do it? Of course he can. And God can do it for you if you just let him. Basically, it's coming to the realization that God is in the self, right in your very own self. Because, as they say in the Bible, God is all. And if God is all, that includes us. And we're every bit as God is himself, as you might say. And so Lester made no bones about that. We are all powerful. And it's not just to say nice spiritual stuff. Lester is also a scientist. And he was coming from the position of, it's not what I say, but it's what I can do. It's what I can prove. And that's why he gave us this very simple, practical method for us to follow and prove all this stuff out for ourselves. Now, that concept of let go and let God, a lot of us have heard that before. But what does that mean? To most of us, that sounds still pretty esoteric, pretty far out there. How do we do that? And what do we let go of? And how do we know when we've let it all go so that we can truly let God do things for us? How do we know if we're not just being lazy and just sitting around waiting for something to happen, but actually being in a proactive state of getting things done while being passive in that state as well? I mean, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's something that's provable. Now, Lester's student, Larry Crane, who carried on his work, made that concept a little bit more practical, a little bit more relatable and doable. See, Larry was a very successful businessman, and he was a huge doer. He built massive businesses. and he became very wealthy, even became famous. Time magazine wrote an article about him, about how brilliant and successful he was and all of that. And Larry, to him, work was what got all of that stuff done. He said that he worked basically 16 hours a day. He didn't even hardly have time for lunch. He'd sat at his desk and shoved a soggy sandwich in his mouth and just kept on working. And so when he met Lester, when Lester came along into his life, Lester said something that threw him for a loop. First thing that Lester said to him was, well, work is for slaves. And that kind of struck Larry like, what are you talking about? I mean, I work really hard and I get stuff done. But then Larry started to examine the fact that, well, he was kind of a slave to his business. He realized that he didn't own his business owned him. And he was having to work really hard, had no time for his family and doing other stuff. To him, life was just all about making money. He didn't even have time to enjoy the money that he made. But what Larry decided was, well, wait a minute. I like what Lester's saying, and I like where he's coming from. The guy's got a good energy. Maybe he's onto something. So here's the thing. If he's wrong, I'm no worse off than I am already. I'm already doing what I'm doing, so I'll just keep on doing it. I don't have anything to lose. But if he's right, maybe I'll have to be working my fingers to the bone anymore. And so Larry followed Lester's work and joined Lester, helped him build his organization, helped him build this wonderful retreat center out in Sedona. And he started to do something that Lester talked about, just letting go, letting it all happen. And he applied that to building the whole retreat center. He applied it to his life. And how Larry found what it was that he had to let go of. He saw it in himself one day when he realized that his need to do something was so strong, and he was being driven by gottas. I got to do this. I got to do that. I gotta. Right? It was this impulsive need to take action. And behind that need was often something that was fear-based. Like, well, if I don't take this action, then nothing will get done. Everything's going to fall apart. I got to do it, or else. And so he's just driven by that need and that gotta. And he saw how uncomfortable it was to live that way, just always on edge. Got to do this, got to do that, gotta. And one day he decided, you know what? I'm not going to listen to that anymore. Right? That's just my mind harassing me, just whipping me with those words. You got to do it. You got to do it. And that mind's talking to me. I'm not going to listen to it anymore. So Larry made a decision one day. I'm not going to do anything. And he also noticed that every time that gotta came up, it was accompanied by this pressure, this stress, right? This uncomfortable feeling. And so what he decided was, I'm not going to take any action. Before I do anything, any action at all, I'm just going to let go of that uncomfortable feeling. I'm going to release that tension, that pressure, that urge that comes with that gotta. It's just a feeling. I'm going to let that go. And then once I let that go, if I decide to do it, I'll do it. If not, I won't. And what he found out by following that and just releasing all that pressure, all that uncomfortable feeling that comes with that sense of I gotta, well, it turned out that he really didn't have to do anything in the end. He said that he spent months just hanging out in bed, literally. He said the highlight of his day was going down and checking the mail. He didn't answer the phone. He didn't do anything. He didn't do any business. And yet, all of a sudden, things started happening in his life. Things started to come to him without him having to lift a finger in order to get them done. Now, even that sounds pretty far out to a lot of us. And when I came along to this method, I was actually the opposite of Larry. He was a big doer, where by contrast, I was a huge slacker. And to me, I was all about being lazy and finding any excuse not to do anything or postponing it or doing very little, as little as I can to get whatever results. So when I met Larry, I was kind of blown away by all the stuff that he seemed to do. And other people would point out, Larry, well, you talk about doing the butt system, but it looks like you're working all the time. Because when I showed up originally, Larry was doing everything. He was running the classes, he was doing all the marketing, he was doing all the analytics for sending out direct mail, and he was also doing all of the releasing support. When you bought the course or when you just got a brochure and it said, do you need any help or do you have any questions? Dial this number. That number rang directly to Larry's desk. And he had like over 100,000 students at that time. So people were calling up all the time, asking for help, needing assistance, asking questions. And Larry was just doing everything. And that blew my mind. And at first I thought, wow, he's just doing so much. He's a big worker. But the more I hung out with Larry and the more I observed him, I saw that he was doing it all with ease. And even more so, he got it all done. And it seemed like if he decided to do something else, like just sit and watch golf all day long, he would just do that. Or he would just spend the whole day going out to Costco, going shopping, or going on a trip. And I saw that Larry did exactly what he wanted, as he wanted, whenever he wanted. He wasn't run by any gadas, even with the business. And so I started to understand that Larry only did what he wanted, and the things that he seemed to do that seemed like work, he was doing effortlessly. And at the drop of a hat, he could just let it all go and do absolutely nothing. And I realized, wow, that's real freedom. And so, me personally, being a slacker, I had to actually learn to take action. Because, see, early on in my releasing journey, I fell into a trap that a lot of spiritual seekers and a lot of releasers fall into, where we hear this, we hear these various teachings about like the butt system or let go and let God, just get out of the way, let the universe do it for you, whatever, however people put it. It's all the same message. And that appeals to me, like a lot of us, and we're like, hey, I don't want to have to work. I don't want to have to lift a finger. I'd rather have it just happen nice and easy like that. But in my case, as well as I suspect for a lot of others in the spiritual community, there's this hidden resistance to taking action. It's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And it's very appealing to let this concept of God do all the action for me. But because I had that hidden resistance, it created a block that kept me from getting results a lot of the time. And so I struggled, even though I got many goals, I really struggled about just having that happen all the time with everything. And so along the way, personally, I found it helpful to break through my own personal resistance by taking action and becoming a big doer. Because in doing so, it brought up that resistance, it brought up the garbage that I was floating over and not even noticing in my life. And seeing that garbage come up and going, ooh, wow, that doesn't belong there. I'm going to let that go. And just dumping that garbage, dumping it. And through that process of taking action and doing stuff to bring up the garbage, letting it go, eventually I got to the place where I can now just let it all go. And I'll give you a big recent example of how this has played out. Now, as I've talked about a lot in various videos, about 5 years ago, we did this course here called the Money Alchemy course, where a friend and longtime releaser who is a professional trader for 40 plus years now showed us how to trade in the markets and how to read price charts and how to be a professional trader ourselves. And there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to do, to practice and build up the skills. It's very much like, if you want to become a professional athlete, you have to work at it. You have to build up the skills, practice, spend time, get good at it. It's that kind of a thing. And so I jumped into it with both feet and took a lot of massive action in the early years, studying, spending time on the charts, drawing on them, spending time live with the markets, interacting, making trades, making money, losing money, and so on. And all this while learning, getting better, and so on. But I found that after a certain point, I pretty much grasped all that I needed intellectually or understanding about the technical aspects of trading. And what was necessary for me to grow and become great at this is not so much more knowledge and more analysis techniques, any of that stuff. None of that was needed anymore. But what was necessary now was doing the inner work. Because what I found, what often happened is that I would show up to trade and I would have this program, like a lot of us have, where if you're going to sit down in front of the computer and do a task like trading, for example, there's this attitude, this condition that we all have of like, oh, I'm showing up to work. It's like, I'm punching a time clock. So I'm here. I ought to be doing something. And one of the toughest things for me to grasp was giving myself permission to do absolutely nothing. Because if I'm sitting there in front of the computer, working on the charts, there's just like this compulsion. I got to do something. I got to jump in and find that trade today. And that attitude, that I gotta do something, which, again, like I mentioned before, comes from this deep core belief program inside that says, if I don't do it, it won't get done. I gotta do something. I gotta take some action. And what I found was that sort of compulsion, running from that gotta, would often lead me to take the wrong action, make the wrong trade, and send myself backwards. Whereas, as I started to grasp the concept of giving myself permission, even if I'm going to be sitting down for several hours in front of the computer, to do absolutely nothing, but just watch. Because look, the market is going to do whatever it's going to do. And the smart traders are the ones that wait for the market to come from them. It's like being a surfer. You can't make the waves happen. The waves are going to happen. They're going to come when they come. And what you do is you're out there, you're ready to catch that wave at the right moment. That's it. And if the wave comes, great. If it doesn't come, great. Just wait until it comes. And that just reminds me of the story that Lester told after he went free. And he moved from New York City out to Sedona for many, many years, like 10 or 15 years. He sat out in the middle of the desert. And he said that he sat under an apple tree. And he just parked his body there, and he traveled the universe. He visited other planets. He met other beings out there. He talked about that a lot. But one of the things that he mentioned there was, as his body was parked underneath that apple tree, he said, practically speaking, from that body's point of view, if an apple fell from the tree, he ate it. And if it didn't, he didn't. Life was that simple on that level. And so I just kind of followed that guide, and I looked for my own personal goddess. I got to do this, got to take action, got to make something happen. And I noticed for myself, it came from an uncomfortable urge, really from a feeling of lack, like I'm impatient and nothing's happening. And it's this situation, this feeling of lack that drove me to try to make something happen. But like I said, the market works on its own time frame and its own waves. And so for me to try to dictate and make something happen, that's totally, it's ridiculous, well, to put it mildly. So I had to let go of those gatas and get to the place where when I show up on a particular day, that I'm going to be looking at the charts, that I'm going to be looking at the markets, my first thing to do is release and just get really clear on give myself permission to do absolutely nothing and just watch. Watch, watch, watch. Have no gotta, no need to do anything. And lo and behold, here's what I discovered. Things happened a lot more quickly than I ever dreamed that they could happen. And me, just being in the state of the watcher, I was able to witness and spot the opportunities that came my way, rather than me having to go out and find them. They just came to me. And when I recognized them, that recognition was intuitive and it was immediate. And it came from a place of knowingness. And that had a dramatic shift on my ability to build profit in my account. So that has been a huge movement that I've made back to letting God take care of everything and letting go, get my own ego out of the way. And it's just been like this whole arc. I went from slacker to I don't want to do anything to being willing and capable of taking massive action to then letting go of having to take action and just letting it all come to me. Not from an apathetic slacker point. That's like at the other end of the perspective, the spectrum. Coming to the opposite side, which is just stillness, peace, awareness. And to the thinking mind, it might seem like if you're just sitting in a place just watching, you're just going to have to watch and wait and wait and wait. But in my experience, being in that state, things happen like that. The world happens much faster than you could ever imagine. And so, and it's much, much easier that way. Now, talking about getting my ego out of the way, that was a big lesson for me. This also reminds me of something that another great master that many have heard about, Ramana Maharshi, what he once said when he talked about doership. He said there's nothing wrong with being a doer, right? The thing is that it's that sense of doership that's the problem, and not the actions themselves. But that sense of me, I'm the one who's doing it. I'm the one who's got to do it. Me, the ego, right? See, that's where we're coming from when we're coming from gatas. We're coming from that ego. And it's fear-based. It's manipulative. It's trying to control. It's being impatient. It's being aggressive. It's trying to force your will. And that just messes everything up. It's not about being in the flow. It's not about beingness, and it has nothing to do with God. It's the opposite. It's ego. And so that's what Ramana talks about, right? There's nothing wrong with being a doer, but it's that sense of doership. I got to do it. Whereas, like in the Bible, it says, it's not me, but it's the Father who worketh through me, right? I just get out of the way, and I just let the Father, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, beingness, do it. And that is a major step that'll move us up to that path to being masters and being free ones ourselves. And so I think what stops a lot of us from taking this step is that fear that if I don't do it, it won't get done. That we can't trust beingness. That if we don't take action, that means that we're going to be lazy. We're going to fall into that side of the spectrum that lies in apathy rather than the positive side that's in peace. Now, sometimes they look the same, right? Someone who's very peaceful might look apathetic. Someone who's in apathy, they might look very peaceful. But there's a big difference, because someone who's in apathy, they have no energy, no positive energy, right? They're just loaded down, heavy. And it's impossible to take action. They cannot do it. Whereas someone who's in peace has an abundance of energy, loads of positive energy, and can take immediate action, just like that. That's how you know the difference. When you're in peace, you can take action. There's no resistance and there's nothing stopping you. And so, now let's practice this, and so we can get a little taste of what stands in our way, what's stopping us, what's keeping us stuck, from just letting go and letting the but system work for us in our lives. So take a look at something in your life that you gotta do, that you have the sense of, if I don't do it, it won't get done. Like having to work for a living, for example. Right? I gotta set the alarm in the morning, get up, go to work. Right? Gotta make the donuts every day. And if I don't do that, I won't make money. I won't be able to pay my bills. I'll lose my house. I'll end up on the street. I don't want to do that. So I gotta keep on doing that. I keep on working like a slave throughout my life. All right, so what's a gotta that you have? And when you think about that, just notice that when you're thinking about that in your mind, right? Your mind stirs up all these feelings, all this pressure. And you might feel a particular pressure now in your stomach or chest. We're going to look here. This is where we could really feel things, in our stomach and chest area. And so it might even help you to close your eyes and put your head down towards your stomach or chest when you think about this thing you got to do. And just notice if there's this tightness, this clenching feeling, this contraction that shows up in your stomach or chest right now. Just notice what you feel there. You feel the contraction? And you've been feeling that your whole life. You may have been calling it pressure, stress, or other things. And it feels uncomfortable, right? But that's that garbage that you've been sitting on, that's been sitting deep down in your subconscious. And every time you think about something you don't want to do, but you got to do it anyway, that garbage comes up. And there's a part of you that doesn't like the garbage. Like a bunch of feelings, a lot of negative feelings. They come up this way. And they're garbage too. Fear, anger, frustration, guilt. These things come up. And of course, we don't like these feelings. We don't like it when fear comes up. We don't like it when stress or pressure comes up. And what do we tend to do? When these feelings come up, we go, no. We push them back down. And so we get into this pushing match, trying to shove these feelings back down because they annoy us and we want to get them out of here. And that's where we feel this contraction, this tightness in our stomach or chest. The feeling's trying to come up and we're pushing it down. But when we push down those feelings, does it make them go away? When you say no to the fear, when you push down your frustration, does that make it just disappear in your life? Or does it just come up again and again and again and again? Until maybe someday you finally release it. So right now we're going to do something different. Rather than pushing it down, we're going to release it. So again, just get in touch with that contraction when you think about that thing you got to do. And if you don't do it, it won't get done. If you don't do it, things are going to turn out bad, big time. And just notice that feeling in your stomach or chest now. And now, what I want you to do is just open up an imaginary window or door right in front of that contraction, wherever it is that you feel that. And it's just energy there. It's nothing that's solid or physical. It's just a feeling, just energy. And so, just imagine that energy moving out the door. And you can imagine it however you like. Just smoke drifting out the door, water flowing out, bubbles floating out, whatever. Just imagine that energy just going out that imaginary door. And let it go out that door a little bit more. And some more. And even more. And some more. And let a little bit more of that energy go, just out that door. It's just energy. It's not good. It's not bad. You don't need to examine it. You don't need to judge it or figure anything out about it. It's just energy and it wants to leave. That's why it's coming up in the first place. So just open up that door and let it leave. And more. And some more. And even more. And some more. And even more. and even more. All right? And notice how you feel now. Now, all we're looking for is just a lighter feeling. Just notice if you feel a little bit lighter than you did a few moments ago. Notice the difference? And doesn't that feel better than walking around all clenched up? And when you feel a little bit lighter, and you think about that gotta, see if you feel more of that pressure, right? Or less of that pressure now. Like, oh, I don't gotta do that right now. Maybe there's another way. Maybe I can find a better solution than having to roll my sleeves up and get it all done myself. And maybe I could just allow it to come to me. You see, when you're listening to your mind, it just keeps you in a box. And all you see are just problems and the stuck situation. But when you start releasing, first, you'll notice that ideas, inspirations come to you just like that. It's like, oh, yeah, I could do that. Or, yeah, not so bad. You start to get a different picture internally. And if you just keep doing this, then it's more than just your internal picture. Your external picture will have things just start coming your way. All you have to do is just check it out, see for yourself. But now, just to do one more thing. For those of you that have a fear that, well, I can't trust beingness. I can't let go of having to control it all myself. And maybe I've tried it before and I got burned. But here's the thing. See if you're trying to figure out how to turn that over to God, how to turn it over to beingness, how to turn it over to the universe. See if you've been trying to figure out what exactly is the but system and how to do it successfully. And notice what you're doing when you're trying to figure it out. You're asking your mind. And the mind is just a computer, just a machine. And it cannot grasp what's beyond the physical world. It cannot grasp beingness. It cannot know God. The mind only knows limitations. And so when you're asking that thing how to do the but system, it doesn't have a clue. And so a lot of us get stuck trying to figure it out, and that's why we get stuck. Because we don't get any answer from the mind other than it's impossible. You can't do it. You're no Lester. And maybe Lester isn't even a Lester. How do you even know that what he says is true? And so the mind will fill you with doubts. It'll fill you with fears. It'll fill you with problems. And that's what the mind tends to do. Just notice how your mind talks to you. Rarely does it say a nice thing. It's always filled with concerns and worries and struggles and problems and judgments. It always keeps telling you to beat yourself up. And that always follows when you're trying to figure something out and you don't get an answer. What does your mind tell you? Well, you haven't been able to figure it out? Here's my advice. Beat yourself up. See if that isn't true. And see, that's how your mind talks to you. The problem is, most of us, we think we are that mind. But notice what I just mentioned a moment ago in the previous sentence. That's how your mind talks to you, right? Your mind talks to you. Who's it talking to? There's this thing in the mind, there's this voice, the sound in your head, talking to you. Who's that you that it's talking to? That awareness, that part that's aware of the mind, doesn't really have a name, does it? Or a face, or a body, or make any noise at all. It's just a silent presence that's aware of the mind and aware of the world. And it's very still and peaceful and positive. Maybe, just maybe, that's the God that you're looking for. And the more you listen to that, even though it makes no noise, rather than your mind, the more you're going to be able to just sit back and have everything come to you with ease. So, could you let go of wanting to figure it out? Could you let go of asking that mind? It doesn't know anyway. You got nothing to lose. And see if you've been disapproving of yourself. Oh, I'm so limited. I have all these problems. Oh, poor me. And how does that help you? And who's carrying on like that? You are. And so if you're doing that and it doesn't help you, now you can make a decision. I'm going to be positive and love myself, or I'm going to be negative and beat myself up. What do you decide? And by the way, this was just a simple thing that I did that made a huge turn in my trading. When I came from my I gotta and I took an action that resulted in a calamity to my account, I noticed there's a strong urge to go and start beating myself up. But then I started to catch it and go, wait, how does that help me? What do I want to do that for? So I let that go. And that just broke the whole program. It's as simple as that. This method is so simple and easy. Keep it that way. So could you let go of disapproving of yourself? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself a little bit more? And could you let go of disapproving of yourself even more? And some more. And some more. And even more. And even more. And could you let go disapproving of yourself even more? And even more. And see how you feel now. Again, just looking for a lighter feeling. Just notice if you feel a little bit lighter. And that's not so bad. That's just showing you're moving in the right direction. Now, could you give yourself a little bit of approval? No reason. It's not about telling yourself nice things. It's just a decision. Could you like yourself? Just because. You don't need a mind for that. You just do it. And could you give yourself a little bit more approval? And a little bit more. And could you give yourself even more approval? And even more. And even more. And even more. And how does that feel? Again, just see if you feel lighter, more positive, more loving. And if you keep going this direction, you'll discover that just love itself is the most powerful force in the universe and can get anything done without having to take action. If you've listened to Lester, you probably heard him say, just love, love, love. And you'll be so happy and healthy and prosperous. But all you have to do is, in order to be loving, is let go of all your non-loving feelings. Let go of that ego, let go of that mind. And just let it all go. And if you really want to know the but system, not just as a concept in your mind, but as a real-world demonstration in your life, the best way to do that, to know it for yourself, is to join us for the next 6-week course called the Wealth Manifestation Course. It's happening this July, and it's all about bringing the but system into your life. Not just demonstrating small things, but demonstrating huge, undeniable proof that you are that powerful. If you want to prove that to yourself, there's a link in the description below. It starts July 17th, the Wealth Manifestation Course. It's all about bringing Lester's teachings and bringing the reality of what Lester discovered into your life. All right, so check it out. I got a link to it below. Again, it starts July 17th. I'll see you there, and I'll also see you on the next video. Happy releasing.